Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I want to give you guys another card review of the Kobolds Catacombs expansion, and I want to keep these videos a bit shorter than the last one where I kind of got backed up because I've been sick, and I want to keep them like bite-sized so you guys can see kind of like a dozen cards at a time and have a bit of a build-up to the release of the full set. So to kick it off, I have Geosculptor Yip, the Warrior non-weapon legendary. It's an 8 mana for 8, which is very good stats if you're playing against the priest, I guess, unless they have the new board clear, which they probably will. But more than that, the effect is actually pretty strong. It's pretty relevant. At the end of your turn, summon a random minion with cost equal to your armor up to 10. So this is not recruit. It doesn't pull it from your deck. It's not like you put Yashiraj as the only other minion and that kind of shenanigans. It just summons it. It could be any card, any class, anything. And, you know, some people have an issue with a lot of the random cards, myself included, but I don't think this is that random of a card because it is that random of a card, but it doesn't have a huge impact with its randomness because you don't play this on like turn 2 and swing the game to a victory instantly. This is an 8 mana card. If you have a small amount of armor, you just get a 2-drop or whatever. Yes, the range of 2-drops is really large, but that really large range of 2-drops doesn't matter so much on turn 8, 9, and 10. And obviously thereafter. And if you're talking about big minions, there's fairly small differences. Like, if you have 15 armor, you're just getting a 10-drop. All 10 drops are just really big guys. If you get unlucky, you're getting a 7-5. If you're getting lucky, you're getting like a 12-12, right? So yeah, there's a bit of randomness there, but not a lot. Ultimately, your opponent's going to have to kill the Geosculptor, and then the other minion on the board is going to pose a big threat. So this is obviously a very good card, but it follows in an old archetype. It follows in the Control Warrior. And the Control Warrior, it struggled to do well against tempo decks, and there's a lot of those right now. And it struggled to do well against combo decks, and Rizaka's Priest is still going to be around. There are no cards rotating out of the standard format when Kobolds Catacombs goes live. So all the decks that are currently in the meta will try to stay in the meta, and likely some or a lot of them will. So while this is an excellent Control Warrior card, it might not see play because Control Warrior might not be very good in the meta, at least until the rotation, which will happen on the next expansion after Kobolds Catacombs. Then we have the Warlock legendary weapon, Skull of the Manari. 5 mana, 0/3 at the start of your turn, so not when you play this, the start of the turn after you play this, summon a demon from your hand. And this, like, my comments on this card made it on Reddit a bit, because I think it does resonate with a lot of people's thoughts. This card could say, at the start of your turn, and you can just fill in the blank. Anything you want. Anything you can imagine. The most broken thing ever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't excite anyone. Because this is a card that does absolutely nothing if your opponent has weapon removal. And that is actually a bit of a problem. A lot of the other weapons, while they get weapon removed as well, and weapon removal does primarily target slow control deck weapons, like all of the legendary weapons introduced so far, except perhaps the Druid one. This particular one does actually nothing if it gets weapon removed immediately. It's just a write-off card. And it's not like playing a counter card for card. The cards that remove this, remove it with the battle cry. So you're trading your turn, this card, a lot more mana than your opponent's going to have to use for the battle cry effect of fairly well-statted minions that are going to kill you in the following turns because you just gave up 5 mana worth of tempo. So huge crushing effect. And the issue I take is I don't understand how Blizzard is dealing with this situation because there's 2 cases. Either they really screwed up and they introduced 9 slow legendary weapons in the most heavily filled weapon removal set in the history of Hearthstone. We have the normal ooze, we have Harrison, which are the classic set, We have people having extra incentive to run the 1-mana Pirate because Patches is still in. We have the 4/3 Ooze that removes a durability, and we have the new Ooze from Ungoro, 3-mana 3/3 that destroys weapon, and you gain armor equal to its attack. And that set, Ungoro, is rotating out at the same time as Kobolds. So those sets are essentially stuck together. So Kobolds and Catacombs is going to be tied to the expansion that's bringing the second Ooze in the meta. It's the worst time to come up with weapons. We've only seen the Rummaging Kobold as weapon recovery, and honestly, it's not good enough. It's total crap. It's garbage. But I can't get excited about a weapon like this when potentially in a disaster situation there is no countered weapon removal. I hope that's not the case. Or probably the more likely situation, there is counter weapon removal, but they haven't revealed it yet. So if they haven't revealed it yet, why haven't they? Because if they show us how we can actually stop weapon removal from taking over these legendary weapons, we can actually get excited about these legendary weapons. But until that happens, I cannot get excited about a card that does literally nothing if your opponent removes it. And even if he doesn't, like, this card's pretty decent. It summons it from your hand. So, you know, like the 1-turn delay is worth a few mana points. Like, even if you get like a 6 or 7 mana demon, you have to get this effect off twice probably for it to actually be worth it. So that's a bit of a struggle even then. Then we have Unstable Evolution. This is a pretty interesting card. It actually has a new mechanic, the repeatable mechanic. So the card is an evolve, but it's a single target for friendly minions. You can't use it on enemy minions to bypass taunt or anything. Friendly minions only, single target evolve. It's +1, but it's repeatable. So what does repeatable mean? Repeatable means that you can play this card as many times as you want on the turn that you first played it. So if it's sitting in your hand for 9 turns, and then you choose to play it, when you play it, you'll get it back to your hand instantaneously, and you can keep playing it that turn. At the end of your turn, you discard the card. Some people thought it works really well with Gadgets and Auctioneer. I'd say it works pretty well. The main issue is the Gadgetzan draw will probably happen before this card is returned to your hand, so you're not going to be able to draw like that many cards, but it's still pretty good. In terms of comparing this to regular evolution mechanics, I think it's quite solid. I think it's probably going to see play in Evolution Shaman. Yeah, you evolve something. If it's good, you keep it. You evolve something else. If that's no good, you re-evolve it. It's a more mana-intensive evolve and kind of goes against the theme of the deck, but it's really hard to actually think that Evolve Shaman is a good deck when you look at the deck. It's a deck that actually just works out miraculously in practice, and I have to imagine a card that works with the minions that you'd include in that deck anyway would probably just work. Ley Line Manipulator. Oh god, this card is terrifying. 4 mana, 4/5, elemental. So it works with the Mage Spellstone. Battlecry, if you're holding any cards that didn't start in your deck, reduce their cost by 2. And I'm pretty sure it works with the Ley Line as well, because when the Ley Line becomes the secondary form or the third form, I think it becomes a different card because that card didn't start in your deck. I don't know if it works with like Prince Malchezaar, but it certainly works with all the random mage spell generators, and there are so many of them. I'm actually concerned with the direction of this card. Some people said they weren't too scared when I posted on Twitter that this card should scare you, and I think there's a little bit of lack of understanding there, because it's not that, yeah, you know, it's basically a Yeti and you make up its cost by discounting like 2 or 3 things in your hand, right? It's not really that. We're getting a lot more spell generation in this expansion, first of all. That's very important. And this doesn't work with just spell generation. It's cards that didn't start in your deck. And it has to do with counterplay. Hearthstone is a game that, at least originally, and it has become less of this over time, but generally Hearthstone's a game where I make an action and you try to make an action that partly or directly counters my action and tries to lead with a different game plan. And then I try to follow that, and then it goes back and forth. So I do something, You react to it and do something. I react to that and do something. So what I've experienced in Arena with cards like Primordial Glyph, other cards that give discounts on random cards, is that game plan goes out the window. When my opponent does a Primordial Glyph on turn 2 in Arena, I have just given up playing around anything. I have taken my 4.5 years of experience in Hearthstone and forgotten it, because there's no point. I cannot play around a 4-mana Meteor. I cannot play around a 5-mana Flame Strike. And with this card, it can get way more crazy than that. You know, you can Babbling Book, Primordial Glyph, you can generate Kabbalist, new Kabbalist. You could have like 6 different cards. You can play, you know, 1 of these, 2 of these. You can have a card that's already discounted by Primordial Glyph. You can have a mage doing like, I don't know, Blizzard, Shatter, and then like Fireball, Firelance Portal. They could just do all of that in one turn. It's just, the play-counterplay dynamic just completely goes away. And it's kind of scary. I don't like cards like these because, you know, honestly, the Generator Mage might not be a good deck. It probably will be, at least eventually, but it might not be a good deck in this meta. I think it probably will be, but maybe not, you know, maybe not. If it's not a good deck, then this card, you know, whatever. Doesn't matter. Why make it? But if it is a good deck, you really want to play against that. When there is a really good deck in Hearthstone, what happens is a third or like half the people playing ladder just play that deck. Would you really want to play 1/3 or half of your games against the deck where most of the time all of your experience in Hearthstone counts for nothing? Probably not. Probably not. So I don't like this direction that Mage is going in. Evasion. This is a pretty cool card, actually. It's a rogue secret. It's part of the new set. And it's after your hero takes damage, become immune this turn. So it's kind of like a better ice block if you play it correctly. But it's pretty hard to play it correctly, and I think it's pretty obvious when you play this card. So it's different than ice block because ice block, if it's turn 3 and you have ice block in your hand, you just play ice block and it saves you like 9 turns later. This doesn't do that. You can't play Evasion on curve. It's not going to do anything because 1 or 2 turns later, your opponent is going to hit you for like 2 damage of the Holy Nova. And then it's going to go off. And then it's going to do nothing. Like actually nothing. So the way you have to play this card is the turn before you think you're going to die, you play Evasion. And in that case, it does actually work in some cases as a better ice block for 1 less mana. So is this card going to see some play? Yeah, it seems pretty likely. That's a really powerful effect, but it's a high skill effect. You have to plan around it. And again, if Generator Spell Mage is the deck that you have to plan around, that's probably not going to be possible. So there's going to be a lot of X factors in the viability of this card, but I really like the design because I think people who are really experienced and in tune with what's going on in that game are going to have better results using this card. And who doesn't love cards that do that? Firbolg, Mossbinder. It's a 5-mana 1/1. And it transforms a friendly minion into a 6/6 elemental. So this card is in between Kings and Bone Mare. I think it's better than Kings. So it's like +5/+5, and you get the 1/1 body. It's a pretty nice evolution target, honestly. So yeah, I think it's better than Kings, and that says a lot because Paladin decks traditionally do play Kings. So it seems like this will fit into some deck. But it is so much worse than Bone Mare, it's mind-blowing. So Bone Mare can be played if you don't have anything. It's pretty bad, but it's not 5-mana 1/1 bad. This is unplayable if you don't have a decent target to transform. Unplayable. No chance, right? Bone Mare gives it Taunt and essentially +4/+4. This, at best, is +5/+5, unless you're using it on like a hexed minion that was like a 0/1, I suppose, right? So, yeah, considerably worse than Bone Mare, but seems like it could be better than Kings in some decks. So, it's probably going to fit into some place. It might take a little bit. Some of these refined tempo decks take more than a few weeks to develop in the meta. Unidentified Shield is the new Warrior Imprint card. So when you draw this, it's going to get randomly one of the 4 effects. Those are the 4 effects there. So some of these are actually very good. If you compare it to like Shield Maiden from like, I think GVG or something, it's typically better than them. Like you literally have Shield Maiden as one of the options. You can get a weapon with some armor, you can get a lot of armor, you can get like a Holy Fire. So all the options are pretty good, but it's difficult to use it like a Shield Maiden because you lack the consistency. So, you know, sometimes you might get a minion, but sometimes you won't. So do you plan on that or do you not? Because you really need a certain number of decent minions when you're playing a Control Warrior deck. We don't even know if Control Warrior is going to be a thing. It's a difficult card to understand, but it is a pretty high power level card nonetheless. Dry Whisker Armor. For each enemy minion, gain 2 armor. This is great. It's a 2-drop. Not a great card to play on turn 2, but if you gain 2 armor, 2 for 2, gain 2, it's like fair. But later in the game, when you get like, you know, against 3 minions, against 4 minions, it's very powerful. And we've seen some cards even earlier that synergize with armor, so seems pretty strong. And there's another one, Reckless Flurry. It spends your armor, and it deals that much damage to all minions. I think I've actually seen this card, may have even highlighted this card as part of one of the custom Hearthstone videos. But yeah, that's a powerful effect. Spending your armor might be completely suicidal against some face decks, but otherwise, maybe not. It's a really powerful effect, but I still don't know if it's enough to bring Control Warrior back. I just look at the tools that Priest has and compare that to the tools that Control Warrior has, and it's not really close. Priest just has better removal tools, better sustain tools, and right now, much better finisher tools. So, we'll have to see. It might take a rotation for Control Warrior to really take shape. And then the last card on my list is Deck of Wonders. 5 mana, shuffle 5 scrolls into your deck. When drawn, cast a random spell. This probably will work reasonably well with the weapon, the Mage Legendary weapon that draws 3 cards at the end of turn, because at that stage, you're just trying to end the game and burn your opponent down. And a random spell, totally random, with random targets, that's generally pretty bad. But if you're in that situation of the game where you're just trying to end it, just throwing spells at your opponent and stuff, it's probably okay. It's probably all right in that case, especially if you're drawing that many cards. Like, if it's 5 mana, play 1 random spell, it's terrible. But if it's like 5 mana, play 3, maybe 4 random spells, it's pretty good. So the value of this card has to do with how many cards you have left in your deck and how many cards you're drawing each turn. So it could fit into that deck, but it mostly looks like a meme card to me, like Renounced Darkness level. If it is Renounced Darkness level, I welcome. If it's actually meant to be viable, please, Blizzard. Randomness is all right here and there. That's a lot. That's a lot of random. Holy crap. That concludes the cards for this week. Hopefully you guys enjoy my review. I know I've given both point and counterpoint on a lot of these cards, but hopefully your hype is intact, and we'll see what awaits us in a few days. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.